Welcome to the official podcast of Joey's Song. You know, at Joey's Song, we have one mission: raise as much money as we can so that research into finding treatments and cures for epilepsy can get the funding it needs. We would love your support. If you can subscribe and leave a review of this podcast, it will help more than you could ever know. If you have a couple extra mouse clicks left in you, go to YouTube and our YouTube channel, Joey's Song, and subscribe. There. In less than 2 minutes, with a couple of mouse clicks, you will have made it easier for others to find us and help spread the word. Now, if you want to do a bit more, head over to joeysong.org, consider buying a show ticket or some merch, or even making a donation. Thanks. You know, we'll beat this disease, and together we'll have some fun doing it as well. Join us. All right, let's do this. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of LINERnotes. I am Mike Gomoll, working on my f-stop, and the fella over there is
Andy McNamara.
And we are going to talk about music photography. It doesn't have to be rock photography. This is one of Andy's ideas, and it's a great one because it lets us call out some of the amazing Joey Song folks that there are that take some amazing shots. But in general, I think it's a really great topic because it's kind of the tertiary. How's that for a big word? Do I get 25 cents for using a quarter word?
I'm going to have to look it up after this is over.
Good. Yeah, and me too, actually, because I'm sure I used it wrong. We hear the music, but it's a really great topic because it's a real not tactile, but it's another way to interpret the music that's not a music video or not a live performance. So I thought it was great. What made you pick this?
I was thinking about some of our past topics. We were talking a lot about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Beatles. And when I think of John Lennon, I think of Bob Gruen, who was a photographer that took a lot of the famous photos of John Lennon. That got me thinking of Joey's Song, all the great photographers at Joey's Song. And I thought, well, that would be a good topic for us to talk about.
Yeah, it really is. And the fact that you and I can actually name Mick Rock. There's a whole bunch of people, Jay Blanksburg, that does the Dead. There are some photographers who are our eyes to a lot of this stuff. I can't remember off the top of my head. The Queen had the same the same guy took the iconic Freddie Mercury at Wembley leaning back in the yellow thing. So there's a lot of these shots that really are our visuals to some of these bands.
It's like if a tree fell in the woods and nobody was there to see it. A lot of these associations, you mentioned the Freddie Mercury picture, is because a photographer was there to capture it.
That's right. And knew where to be. Because a lot of this stuff, a lot of these photos that we're probably going to reference are back in the day when it wasn't digital, where you took 78 and picked the best two, these guys with 8 terabyte, hard drives on their cameras, they had to pick and choose. I mean, granted, they were professional photographers, so they had the ammo belt of, film on their thing, but they had to know where to be, and that's a real key thing. And when we talk about our pal Ruthie, who I know we'll talk about, the great music photographers know where to be to get the shot, right? Whatever that may be, because, well, let's talk about Ruthie because she's a big example. She knows where to be to find that shot and knows to wait for those moments, and that's part of the art, right?
And if you know that Ruthie knows where to go, and you see Ruthie heading somewhere, that something's going to happen.
That's right. That's Now, are you a photographer at all, other than selfies on your iPhone?
An amateur photographer. I've always been interested in concert photography.
Yeah,
I'm not good at it, but interested in it.
Yeah, it's a hobby, and well, and you don't have to necessarily be good at it to understand it too, right? I mean, I'm not very good at basketball, right? I'm not very good at music, but so I think that's fair to learn about that and to know what makes somebody like Ruthie, who can just find those angles and find those shots. And the lighting too. The one we just posted this week to kind of announce, do a save the date post on social media was one of Ruthie's. I think that was Resnick. I don't know who. I think it was Resnick. And that's just one of those where when you know, right? But especially for those musical moments, you mentioned the Beatles, right? For those of us that weren't around, I mean, I was 8 through 15 when that was going on, right? So I wasn't around for the meat of that, but you can relive it, right? I mean, there's all those images, and you feel like you were there, and I guess that's the meat of great concert photography, right?
And here's a question for you. So there's lots of photographers at Joey's Song capturing moments.
Yeah.
You're, I'm guessing, running around a lot and aren't necessarily able to keep your eyes on everything going on.
Or anything, yes.
When the event gets over every year, do you find yourself seeing some of these photos and being blown away by some of these moments that either you were maybe off to the side or you weren't able to fully get the visuals at the time?
Absolutely. I am able to, that's a really great question. I am able to get the vibe of the evening, right? Because no matter where I am, something's going past me, and I'm around the stage a lot, so I can see the musicians and the joy and all that. So I'm able to, feel that, right? Not necessarily see it, but feel it. But then when it is after the show and 3 weeks later, when I finally caught up on sleep and I can kind of go through all that stuff, then it's just a handful of the snaps, right? I can think, if I think back to, 2 years ago, I think it was the one 2 years ago when Resnick, again, I keep mentioning John, but that was, he's such a rock star that he kind of attracts that stuff. And there's a picture of him and our buddy Sam Farrell, right? And, John's leaning forward on the acoustic and Sam's leaning back on his Strat. Picture. Yeah, right? And it's like, I don't know when that was. I don't know what song it was or where they were, but it's just it's a moment, and I'm sure it had to be also cool for Sam to be a part of that. And I can think of several of those. The ones that really stand out to me are the know-it-all girlfriend moments, right? When they're all out there either abusing verbally the know-it-all boyfriends or in the moment with theirs. I remember specifically, I think it was 2 years ago, they did the Chappelle Roan song Hot to Go. And there's pictures of them all doing whatever the safety dance hand thing. It's glorious. There's so much joy. And that's really the beauty of a photograph done well and framed well and at the right moment. It's like looking at one of those paintings you stand in front of the Louvre where you got to take a half hour to take it all in because so-and-so's just exuberant. The other one is fixing their shoe. And you know what I mean? They're just great. Just great.
I think one of the cool things about Joey's Song is a lot of the photographers are the same every year. And looking at some of these photographers from the past, they had access to the artists because they had a relationship with the artists after a while. The artist felt comfortable. Joey's Song is unique because it's got a lot of backstage moments as well as the public moments. And those backstage moments, the artists are pretty comfortable with the people that are back there taking photos and all that.
Yeah. So as well as the rehearsal time, which is when you kind of combine that casualness of not being showtime with them doing their jobs, right? There are some really cool photos of somebody having to stare at their phone because they're just learning the song, right? And you and I have talked in the past about this, the amazement of the ability of these skilled professionals to do their job under abnormal circumstances or circumstances they don't normally do. And those photographs let you kind of capture that, right? You don't need any sound. You don't even have to know what song that was. You can just like I said, you can see Gail figuring out the bass line while Kay's reading the lyrics and Debbie Peterson's it's awesome, especially for goobers like me that, I can't even play tissue paper and a comb, and these people are putting it all together, and it's that moment in time, right? That certainly at Joey's Song, because of the uniqueness and the one-offness of it, that you might not necessarily have if you follow Springsteen through a whole tour, because that's the other part. Now that you mentioned the skills that those people have, is that if you're shooting the Springsteen tour, you know what happens at the right. Oh, at the beginning of 10th Avenue Freeze Out, he always does this, or all that other stuff. Whereas you don't have that. I mean, the artists don't know what's going to happen, let alone the photographers. So that's another testament to the skill that these volunteers, and I'd like to put that in capital letters too, right? These guys give 3-4 days, noon to midnight days shooting that. And it really does help capture it. And to be honest, it's really important work for us, because my job, and you're helping me do it, is to get more people every year. And people aren't going to sit and watch a 2-hour YouTube video. Some might, but they will, especially if it's of their favorite artist and they see Vicky Peterson there, or Kay Hanley there, or Kurt Smith, or John Resnick, or Butch Vig. In our world of 10-second reels, it's almost like photography is having a comeback, because we've forced ourselves down to 10-second attention spans, and that's not even enough time to look at all these pictures, let alone, a reel of somebody eating cinnamon or whatever the latest TikTok whoozits is. So.
Have you printed off any of these photos from Joey's song?
I have not. We are keeping Google in business with the size of the terabytes of stuff I have. I have never printed them off, but I have, a couple Framios running with stuff, and we use them all the time for promos and that type of stuff. But no, and I put this on the list of, I'm going to someday do it. Right now, I'm lucky that they're in folders with the year and maybe the artist, let alone any notes. And I'm going to look back at it and go, 5 years from now, I'm going, why was this? Just like we do. So.
It seems like the artists really like the photos as well.
Yes.
Yes. Especially, like you said, the group photos of the different artists together. Those seem to go over really well on Instagram and all those social media.
That's a really interesting point. I think part of the reason that is, and now I'm going to turn into Mike Gomoll, rock psychiatrist. I know enough musicians of some level of fame to know that most of them, the last thing they want to do is talk about themselves and their music. And I think that probably carries through to the pictures of, hey, look at how cool I look singing. But here's me with 2 other musicians you don't normally see me with, and then they get to fanboy or fangirl out on it as well. So I think that's all part of it. It lets them be a fanboy or a fangirl, and they're not really saying, look at me, other than look at me, look who I got to hang out with. And we all do that. And it makes them, regular Joes, which they all are. They're just, normal goobs. So, that they love that. And that, I bet we could have 3 photographers backstage doing nothing but groupies or selfies or whatever you call it when 3 or more people are together in a photo. I guess groupies has a different connotation backstage than that, so I won't say that. But yeah, I would think so. Yeah, they do seem to like that. And I think people like that too, especially the folks that can't be there, because it's another expression of the joy, right? And I'm sure I've told this already on this pod. There's a couple of them, especially for these artists that have relatively large followings, like Matt Sorum or Johnny Resnick or some of those, that even to, 4+ months, 5 or 6 likes a day on that picture of John and Gina and I think Brian Aubert, still just, and because and it still pops up and people like it. So yeah, there's some magic in those candid kind of shots like that.
And one thing I was thinking of, Mike, is that pictures get more valuable over time as far as people being interested in them. And that's not only with pictures of like concerts, rock stars, but also family photos, because I've had plenty of uncles and aunts 25 years ago. I was that guy that had the camera out all the time, taking pictures of my relatives, and they're like, come on.
Oh, God. Yep.
But then now, 20, 25 years later, everybody wants those photos. And I feel like some of the photos that we think are unbelievable from the past at the time,
right,
maybe weren't as
fair point.
Cool.
It's funny. Again, it's funny that you say that, because right now here at Joey Song International Headquarters, also known as our house, my wife is doing some redecorating, and we never had a lot of pictures up. And she's in the process of doing that and literally has spent the last 8 months going through boxes, those pictures. And she was always the one, and still is, that at least makes us do the group picture. We have a very small family. So it's my mom, my dad, the kids, me, and Nora. That's usually about it at these. But we now have Christmas and Christmas Eve and birthdays and Mother's Day. We all moan, oh, God, and now we're really glad that we do. We're really glad that we do. So I think there is something to that as well. And I think part of it is because even if you take a video, I've got so many songs from concerts on my phone when an artist, I love this song, and I record it. But you scroll through pictures. So I think that there's something to that. What is it, though? This is a really interesting, I have a question for you that I'd love to hear your take on. Why is something that is such an oral media, music, so well captured and represented in moments in still photography? Why is it that that's iconic for Freddie Mercury leaning back, or Springsteen on top of the piano, or you can Elvis from The Special or The Hayride, or all those other things. Why is that so important, do you think?
I think it's a few things. That's a great question. I think it's a few different things. Part of it is the confidence maybe that these artists are portraying in some of these photos, and also the fact that you know what they're doing. So even if it's a close-up shot of just a singer leaning back, if you're familiar with that artist, you know that in your mind it fills in the blanks of what they're doing. Like you said, the difference between a video and a picture, you're able to build up that legend in your mind, and think of what you want with that 1 second that you're looking at.
Yeah, that's fair. That's great insight. Yeah, I think that's part of it, and it's funny because I remember, part of the backlash, if you will, to MTV was always the artists would say, "I don't want to tell you what the song is about," right? And so many of the videos, if they weren't smashing a TV or, having whipped cream on girls or whatever the metal bands did back in those days, you were basically kind of telling what the song was about. And I know a lot of artists fought that, which is why you got kind of those weird REM videos and a lot of those. And I applaud them for doing that, because there were some times when I go, that's not what the song is about. I know you wrote it, but that's not what it's about, right? And the still photos don't rob you of that, right? They don't rob you of that, your ability, because that's what makes a great song, right? When you go, I can relate to that, and when you find out, so the old 97s, you familiar with the old 97s?
Yep.
Yeah, Rhett Miller's got a song. Rhett Miller's got a song called "Murder or Heart Attack," which is about his cat escaping. But unless you listen really carefully, it sounds like his girlfriend getting away, right? And so if you're listening to it casually, you'd go, "Yeah, man, I remember when she left me." And then if you listen real carefully, it's about a cat, right? Or unless you listen, going back to Stipe, The One I Love. People listen to it and it's about a guy who's not very good to his partners, right? A simple prop to occupy my time, right? But
classic
so many people play that at their wedding, woo, right? Or Born in the USA. We've talked about that a million times. So
Vietnam,
I think that's part of why concert photography resonates better. You can picture it without giving it away. What the gist is. I don't know.
Yeah. We should take a break and come back and talk about some of the different photographers.
Yeah. I think we should do that, and I'll go clean my lens, which is not a euphemism for anything else. Geez, Andy, you can't even say anything to you. All right. Liner notes, Joey Song. This is Mike Gomoll, and the fellow over there trying not to say anything is
Andy McNamara.
See, he said something. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. My lens is clean and my F is stopped. And we are going to talk a little bit about more concert photography. During the break, Andy and I were kind of going through some mementos that we have of various stuff. And it reinforced the magic of photography in a concert setting or in a Candid backstage setting or any of those things, and how that really does make it come alive. That's fun.
We've got to talk about one thing before we get into some different photography, but taking pictures at shows used to be a lot harder because you had to sneak in a camera most of the time. And I don't know if you had a method. Mine would be a disposable in the crotch,
nice.
to get through the pat down.
That's funny because I was in a band. Our name was Disposable in the Crotch, but that was the name of our band. So that's not.
Did you ever do that?
I didn't do the pic. I was a recorder, the audio. So
nice.
did that, and then you have them in your glasses, the little condenser mics, and I got a box somewhere of a whole bunch of really crummy audience tapes from the
Do you ever get
mid-90s. No, never did, because I was pretty careful, and I was going. Although I guess when I think about it, I was going to smaller shows like at the 930 Club in DC or the Riv in Chicago.
Cool.
Or
we've got to talk about that sometime.
Yeah, those. I've got a couple. I was a big Squeeze guy, and Glenn Tilbrook for a while when Chris was working on himself would do his solo thing, and Glenn would do an acoustic night. I went and saw him a couple times. So I did a lot of business in DC with IBM. So I'd go to 930 Club or the clubs in Bethesda and all that. So most of those, once you got past security, you were okay, because otherwise they didn't have security lining the front of the stage at those smaller clubs. And it was dark. And as long as you were careful,
Would you go in the bathroom and adjust everything and then come out?
No, but I would. No, but that's funny that you say that. I screwed up so many by taking it out to look at it and then hiding it back in and then turning it off. Oh yeah. If I would just start it, I knew what the rights, I better make sure it's not going into the red, and yeah, I've got so many tapes that stop at 23 minutes because by the fifth song I was sure it wasn't recording anymore and I screwed it up. So I never got caught. I never got caught. So I was sneaking stuff in, but it wasn't the cameras, it was the audio stuff, and then you had to kind of take it out. And then of course Maxell tapes were 90 minutes. So you had to, do I wait for this song to, it was, and then I realized this is just too stressful. I'm not enjoying the show because, I'll enjoy it 2 days later or in the car listening to it. And I'll go, but I was just at it. So you had the disposable camera in the crotch, and I need to ask, then did it go back in to get the camera out? Or by that point you figured you were safe?
Once in the venue, then a trip to the bathroom, pull it out and just kind of keep it discreet.
Yeah.
And you'd have to try to get the disposables that were 800 ISO, so they were better in the dark. Yeah. Because you didn't want to use your flash, because then, you get...
you may as well say, come and look at me, security. Yeah.
So I've got a Joey song tie-in for you now. Which
okay.
You probably already know this, but Henry Diltz. Do you know who that is?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I know the name.
He did the Morrison Hotel, famous Morrison Hotel album cover.
Yep.
He photographed Paul McCartney. He's done a ton of stuff, but he also photographed the cover for Vicky, Peterson, and John Cowsell's Long After the Fire album. And
I did not know that.
So, and not only that, but the pictures inside the gatefold album were done by Pamela Springsteen, Bruce Springsteen's sister.
That I did know. I did know that, but I didn't know the cover. Well, so I'm going to one-up you on that. Do you know who did the logo, the Vicky and John logo on the front? It has a Joey song tie-in.
I don't know.
We need a drum roll sound effect. Gail Greenwood's partner, Chill. He's a graphic designer, so his name is Chill.
Oh,
Chill
cool.
did the logo. So yeah,
was that a connection made through Joey's song? That's cool.
Well, you know what? I think it was solidified because Gail had played with Debbie. So there's a charity called Hot Stove Cool Music, which is Theo Epstein, Chicago Cubs, go Cubs, 3.5 up in the standings as we record this. And Gail did it, and Debbie Peterson. I don't know if Vicky ever did it. So they knew each other, but I think it's more now that they're closer friends because of it. So it may not have been, let me put it this way. We didn't introduce them, but we were their first blind date. So that's connection. But I didn't know. I did know because John's got a good Springsteen story. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but he's told it a couple times. So I knew that he was involved in that, something about hogging the pictures or something. But I did not
John's
know
got like a story about everybody, and he doesn't think they're like big deals when he's telling the stories either. Like, but I thought,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I thought that was pretty cool that Henry Diltz did the cover for their album, though. It turned out great in the cab of John's truck. But that Morrison Hotel cover is so iconic. And you probably know the story that they tried to ask for permission and the desk clerk said no. So they waited till the desk clerk went on a break and walked away. Then the band went in and quickly posed, and Henry took the pictures, and then that was it.
Yeah, they were out of there. Yeah, and that's a whole nother. We could do a whole thing on classic album covers too, because that's an art form in and of itself as well. But yeah, I didn't know that I knew of his name and I knew of his lineage, but I didn't know that we'll have to ask them how they got him he must live up there somewhere.
Well, how did you get him to do your album cover?
Called him up.
Yeah. We've known Henry for
we've both
many,
known
many
Henry.
years.
Everybody can know Henry. He is the most approachable. He's at all the shows. You just see him. He's always wearing a denim shirt, long gray hair parted in the middle with ponytail, and you should take a picture with his camera now. Just yep. And you'll look at that and you say, why didn't my phone picture come out that way? Yeah.
He's magic.
He's magic.
Great album cover. Great album, by the way, too. That Long After the
Fire. It really is. Sam and I went and saw them about a month or so ago down in Woodstock, Illinois. And a beautiful that's again, we found out because every local will tell you that's where they filmed Groundhog Day, was in Woodstock, Illinois. So they will tell you that. This beautiful opera house, it probably holds 300-400 people, just beautiful. It was a great place for an acoustic show. The acoustics were perfect. And I wish they'd just do that whole album. You know, they do about 4 or 5 songs off of it, and then they run through Cowsill songs and Action Skull songs and Bangle songs, and they do all that. But every one of those songs is great. I mean, when they talk about what great songwriters that Bill and Barry were, they're not joking. I mean, and those are some aching country songs too. Just and they sound so good together. They're just,
And I think when you go to see Vicky and John, it is amazing. If you're not familiar with them, I think people walk away realizing the amount of work that the two of them have touched, like the songs.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that John was involved in Hair.
Right.
Or that Vicky, played Manic Monday, that kind of stuff.
Cowsills were, I believe, either they're the ones singing it, had something to do with the Love American Style theme too. I wish they would do that. But
I tell a lot of the local bands that I talk with, they'll tell me they had a bad show where only like 5 people showed up.
Yeah.
And I'll say, well, I saw some pictures online though of you guys. They're really cool pictures, and you couldn't even tell that nobody was there. Like
that's right.
It's almost like you need to use any opportunity, to your point earlier, to build your brand. Get out there, peacock. Just play like there's 1,000 people there. If there's somebody taking pictures, nobody's going to know. That's going to come across totally different than it was.
Well, and you hear the stories of some of these legendary bands in the days when bands used to do residencies, right? And they'd start out, the first night, nobody was there, and the second night, 20 were there, and by the third week, there were a couple hundred, because I'm sure they put on the same frickin' show they did the first night as they did on the one when there was a line around the building, because that's what you do. And I think you're right, that's bands that ignore the visual aspect of it are missing a big piece of it, right? Because then you get the old, you may as well put the cardboard cutouts up there and, or the hologram Elvis. Or there's a hologram ABBA thing apparently in London. I've got to see. Have you heard about this?
I have not.
I listened to a pod about it, and it's by one of the one of the two guys, I don't know, difference between Benny and Bjorn. I wouldn't know if they're standing in front of me, but their son worked with Lucas film stuff. And now there's a whole hologram show. They built their own theater. It's on London's East End. But so those days aren't far behind where, it's going to be, nobody's ever going to tour again. They'll just do one show and their hologram will come to a town near you. I don't know. I took us down a wormhole there. I'm sorry.
Made me sad.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, let's all sit and stare at our feet for a second. All right.
So I've got a question for you, and I guess we should wrap this up soon. But Bob Gruen, mentioned him in the first segment. He was doing a presentation at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they had the John Lennon exhibit there.
Oh.
My brother, my mom, and I went, and he went through, showed his pictures.
That was great.
It was awesome.
I bet.
Talked about his relationship with John and Yoko, and it started because he was at an event, and all these people were taking pictures of John and Yoko, and John made a comment of, "What do you guys do with these pictures? I never see them." And Bob Gruen said, "Well, I'll give you these. I'll drop them off. Or how can I get them to you?" And John said,
"Yeah,
just drop them off at the house." And Bob said he developed the pictures. A few days later, he went and he knocked on the door, and some actor that he recognized answered, said, "John's not here, but I'll give these to him." And he said John was so impressed that somebody gave them something without expecting anything back that they ended up making Bob Gruen their photographer. And he got their trust. He took the famous New York sleeveless shirt picture of John Lennon. He took the picture of John in front of the Statue of Liberty
with the hat on and the with subtitle captured, "Take This, Dick Nixon." Yeah.
Legendary pictures of John Lennon that the estate's been able to use decades later, and they're iconic photos of John's New York time. So I think that's just cool, and that's somebody using a photographer during their personal life, not during live shows, but still using the medium for the art.
Well, that's really interesting because when you think about some of these still photographers, Annie Leibovitz, there's a whole category that are known for being able to capture the essence of their subject. And that's more than just, we need a 43 f-stop on this, and we need 2 flange lights at alternate, whatever the heck it is, right? That's putting them in those situations where their personality comes out, right? And and I believe with specifically those 2 that you mentioned about John, right, with the peace sign and the New York City sleeveless shirt, are probably just moments that presented themselves as opposed to any, "All right, John, we need one of you now that Nixon is, can't take away your green card anymore," and they probably just became as opposed to were planned. That would be my guess. And we'll end on this one. Speaking of the Beatles and little patience for it, the cover of Abbey Road, they got 6 shots to walk across 3 times. That's all that guy had. And you can see the other 5, and you know why they chose the one. But, the flip side of it was, we don't have time for this nonsense. We're going to walk back and forth 3 times. You get what you get. And because it wasn't in the days of click, click, there were literally 6 shots. It wasn't 5 shots on, each time across. So
all the legs turned out perfect, like the steps and lightning in a bottle.
We got to see all the clues as to why Paul was dead. That's a 5-part podcast, right?
Yeah, that's
Paul's holding the cigarette, and he's dressed like a corpse, and George is dressed like a gravedigger, and John is dressed like an angel, and Ringo's dressed like a preacher. And the car behind them, the VFW bug, the license plate says 21IF, which means Paul would have been 28 if he had lived. It's all there. It's all there, people. All right, this has been great. As usual, Andy, you killed it with the topic. This is a ton of fun. And to the one person that's still left listening after all of this babble, thank you. I'm trying to close. Everyone, remember, if you do like this stuff, please go and follow and like and comment and all that stuff on the thing, because it feeds the algorithm and other people can find us, and then more people will help us fight epilepsy with music. So Andy McNamara, thank you for your time. It's Liner Notes, and I'm not going to end with saying I'm going to go clean my lens, because the emails that we've gotten since I've said that have been really disgusting. I'm not going to lie to you. Hey, thanks for sticking around all the way to the end of the podcast. A quick reminder, if you can give us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast provider and write a short review, it will really help us out. If you can head over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel over there, that's another big help. These simple acts make it easier for others to find us. And of course, head over to joeysong.org to join our community and stay up to date on all the news. Thanks, and we'll talk again real soon.
Learn more about Joey Song by visiting joeysong.org. The theme music was composed by Sam Gomoll, and Joey Song is a federally registered 501c3 charity. Thanks for listening.